The throne room of the alien palace was filled with laughter. But it wasn't the laughter of joy, it was cruel and mocking. Alien nobles, dressed in golden robes and shining armor, stood in a circle as the king stepped forward with a proud grin on his face. He held something behind him, or rather someone, the human, Marcus, stood quietly in the middle of the room. A former Earth soldier, he had been sent as part of a peace mission. He had survived deadly battles, made smart alliances, and even saved the alien king's army in a recent war. He was expecting a reward, perhaps weapons, land, or a powerful rank. Instead, the king laughed and shoved a fragile figure toward him. "Here," the king said, his voice loud and filled with amusement. "A royal gift for the human hero. My daughter, broken, useless, but perhaps you humans enjoy fixing trash." Everyone laughed harder. Marcus stared at the girl now standing in front of him. She was different from the other aliens. Thin, quiet, and not making eye contact. Her pale blue skin looked almost gray. Her silver hair fell across her face like a curtain. She didn't speak, didn't even flinch at the crowd's laughter. One leg was slightly twisted, causing her to stand with difficulty. "She can't speak," the king continued. "Can't fight. Can't rule? A disappointment. I have no use for her. But maybe you will." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. But he kept his face calm. He looked at the girl again. She wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. But then for just a second he saw something. Her fingers moved slightly. They twitched. She was afraid. She was alive. She wasn't a gift. She was a prisoner. "What's her name?" Marcus asked calmly. The king waved his hand. "Whatever you want to call her. She never answers to anything anyway." The nobles laughed again. Marcus stepped closer to her. Gently, slowly, he held out his hand. The girl didn't move at first, but then, her eyes soft and glowing like moonlight, rose to meet his. For the first time, her hand, shaking, reached out and touched his. The laughter around them faded. Some nobles stopped smiling. The king frowned. Marcus looked at the girl and whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." She didn't respond with words, but she didn't let go of his hand either. That night, Marcus was given a small guest chamber in the palace far away from the royal halls. The girl followed him quietly, her steps soft but unsteady. She didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't ask for anything. She simply sat in a corner and wrapped her arms around her knees. Marcus gave her food. She didn't touch it. He spoke to her gently. She didn't answer, but again he saw her eyes. They weren't empty. They were watching him. Carefully. Cautiously. He remembered something from the battlefield, how injured animals acted when they didn't trust anyone but wanted to live. This girl was the same. She had been hurt. Not just, physically, but deep inside. She had been called broken for so long. Maybe she had started to believe it. Marcus didn't push her. He let her have space, but he left a small meal beside her. A warm blanket. And a chair close to the fire. Days passed. The palace forgot about her. She was no longer a princess to them. Just a joke left in the humans' care, but Marcus never laughed. At her, every day he spoke simple words, showed her objects, asked her questions. "What do you like? Do you want water? Can I read to you?" She didn't answer, but she listened. He knew she was listening. One evening, while sitting near the fire, Marcus closed his eyes to rest. When he opened them an hour later, something had changed. The food plate was empty, and the blanket had been moved to her shoulders. She had fed herself. She had accepted comfort. It was a small thing, but to Marcus, it was a beginning. One night, as wind howled outside the palace, he saw her standing by the window, watching the stars. She looked lost in thought. Marcus stood beside her and said softly, "You've seen more pain than anyone knows, haven't you?" The girl blinked. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, her finger pointed to a star in the sky. Marcus followed her gaze. "You like that one?" She nodded. A nod. A real, clear answer. Marcus smiled. He didn't know what power the king feared in her, or what she had been through, but one thing was now clear. She wasn't broken. She was waking up, and the king had just made the biggest mistake of his life by giving her to the one person who saw her not as a shame, But as a second chance, asterisk the servants whispered behind closed doors. She still doesn't speak, said one. She's cursed, said another. Why did the human accept her? Doesn't he know she's dangerous? Marcus heard the whispers. As he passed through the palace corridors, he didn't answer. He was too busy watching the girl walk beside him, quiet, slow, and still unsure of the world around her. She didn't speak, but she felt everything Marcus could tell. Every sudden sound made her flinch. When people stared at her, she looked down like she was used to being judged. She avoided mirrors. She didn't laugh, cry, or ask for anything, but Marcus saw the way she paused near flowers in the garden. The way she sat near books even though she couldn't read them. The way her hands brushed over music chimes hanging from the ceiling. There was a mind inside her. A full mind locked behind years of fear. One afternoon, a noblewoman entered Marcus's guest chambers without knocking. She looked at the girl sitting silently by the window and gave a cruel smile. You should return her, the noblewoman said. She's not worth keeping. She won't even speak for you. She's not normal. Marcus stood and calmly guided the woman out. Before closing the door, he replied, She's not normal. She's stronger than that. Later that evening, Marcus placed a smooth stone in front of the girl. He pointed to it. Stone, he said. Then he gently tapped his chest. Marcus. He looked at her kindly. She looked at him, but said nothing. He tried again with another item. Cup, and again touching his chest. Marcus. He repeated this with different objects every day, but the girl only watched, listened, and stayed silent. Until one night, it was raining outside, soft but steady. Marcus was reading aloud to himself, hoping she might enjoy the sound. She sat on the floor, staring into the fire. Suddenly, he noticed something strange. She had moved one of the stones he had given her earlier. Not just moved it, arranged it, with two other objects, into a perfect triangle. Marcus walked over slowly. Did you make this? She didn't look up, but her hand touched the shape once, like she was checking it. A symbol. A sign. This wasn't random. Marcus searched through old alien history texts and finally found it hidden, deep in a dusty book, the royal symbol for trapped voice. He looked back at her in shock. You're telling me you want to speak, but something is stopping you. This time, her eyes met his. And very softly, very slowly, she nodded. Marcus single quotes as heart ached. This time, people thought she was silent by choice or worse, that she had no thoughts at all. But she had been screaming in silence. She just didn't know how to be heard. Over the next few days, Marcus changed. Everything. He stopped using words. He started drawing. Simple pictures, shapes, emotions. He drew a happy face, then a sad one, then fear, then anger. He showed them to her. She pointed at fear, then slowly at sadness. He didn't say anything. He simply nodded. He understood. The next day he drew a question mark, then he drew a cage. She stared at it for a long time, then, with slow fingers, she added something beside it. A tiny human. Looking in. That was him. She was in the cage, and he was the first person who had ever stopped and looked. She didn't need to speak. Her silence was louder than any words. But one thing still haunted Marcus. Who had put her in that cage? Why had the king given her away? Not because she was useless. No, it was because she was different, and different was dangerous in the eyes of the powerful. One morning, Marcus awoke to find her sitting at the desk. She had drawn something new, a set of stars connected by lines. And below them, a shape he didn't recognize. What is this? He whispered. She looked at him. And for the first time, her lips moved. No sound came out, but she mouthed one word. Home. Then pointed at the stars. Marcus leaned forward, eyes wide. You're not just a princess. You're not just broken. You're from somewhere else, aren't you? She nodded again, and that's when Marcus realized the king hadn't just hidden her voice. He had hidden her truth, and whatever that truth was, he would help her speak it to the galaxy. No matter what it cost. Marcus was sharpening a broken tool outside the small stone hut. The palace had finally assigned to him. He was no longer welcome in the royal guest chambers. Too many nobles had complained that he was wasting time on a mute girl. The king Didn't care he had already handed her off like trash. So Marcus moved quietly to the edge of the garden district, where no one visited, where she could feel peace, where no one would call her the broken one. Inside, the girl was kneeling by the floor, scratching faint lines into the dirt. It wasn't the first time. Marcus had noticed it many times over the past few days. Strange marks, always erased when he got too close. This time, he didn't say anything. He watched silently from the doorway, his breath still, like a hunter not wanting to scare away a rare animal. Her fingers moved in delicate patterns, curves, dots, symbols. Then suddenly, she looked over her shoulder and saw him. Her eyes widened. She swiped the dirt clean in a panic. Too late. Marcus had already seen enough. That night, when she was asleep, Marcus opened a hidden file on his datapad. He zoomed in on a picture he had taken of one of the dirt drawings. He matched the symbols with ancient royal records. His eyes narrowed. These weren't just shapes. They were forbiddens. Runes, royal magic long erased from the public record. Symbols that only members of the bloodline were allowed to see. Even the king no longer used them. Where did she learn this? Marcus whispered to himself. And more importantly, why had she hidden it? The next morning, Marcus tried a new approach. He didn't ask her questions. He didn't show her words. He laid out sand on the table and began drawing one of the runes he had seen. The girl froze. Her hand hovered over the table. Her lips parted like she wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She looked up at Marcus with panic, but he just gave her a kind smile. "I'm not angry," he said gently. "I just want to understand." She stared at him for a long moment, then, very slowly, she reached forward and with her finger corrected his symbol, a tiny twist at the top. A small tail at the end. The proper form. Marcus leaned forward. "You know this, don't you?" She gave the smallest nod. He showed her another. Again, she corrected it. Each symbol was old. Each had a meaning. Shield, bind, memory, voice. And then one that Marcus had never seen before. She drew it without shaking. A long curve crossing a sharp line, almost like a sword going through a flame. Marcus stared at it. "What does this one mean?" he asked. She looked into his eyes. And then tapped her chest. Then tapped her head. Then touched her throat. She didn't need words. The symbol meant her. It was her true name. Marcus whispered. "They erased you, didn't they?" She blinked. "They didn't just silence you. They wiped away who you were." The girl lowered her head, ashamed, but Marcus reached out and gently lifted her chin. "You are not broken," he said. "You're hidden." And that made her more dangerous than any weapon. But danger was already coming. Someone had been watching. That same night, while Marcus prepared food, the girl suddenly stiffened. She turned her head toward the darkened window. Her eyes narrowed. "Someone's there?" Marcus asked. She didn't move. Then she stepped back from the window and drew 3 runes in the dirt. Marcus leaned in to read them. Watcher, spy, blood. Before he could respond, a rock crashed through the window covered in red dust. Warning, they knew. The court had discovered the truth. The silent girl was never broken. She had power in her blood. Power they didn't understand. Power they feared. Marcus looked at her. "We have to leave," he said, but she shook her head. Instead, she picked up the rock, turned it over. Inside was a tiny crystal shard, one used only by royal assassins. She wasn't afraid. She handed it to Marcus. Then pointed to the flame. She wanted to burn it. "Send a message back." Marcus tossed it into the fire. A flash of red light pulsed from the ashes. The girl nodded in approval. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was sending a warning of her own. And that night, for the first time, she stood tall, not as a gift, not as a shadow, but as someone who had been erased, and was now ready to return. The knock on the door wasn't loud. It was cold. Sharp. Like a blade politely asking to be let in. Marcus stood up at once. The girl, no longer sitting with fear, but standing near the window with alert eyes, turned to him and gave a quiet nod. "They've come," he said. Outside, 3 royal guards waited. Their armor was polished. Their faces were blank. But Marcus recognized the insignia on their shoulders. Royal Inquisitors. They didn't protect the king. They silenced problems. The lead guard stepped forward. Human Marcus, he said firmly. You are ordered to return the girl to the palace. She is to be reviewed by the High Court for breaking royal silence laws. Marcus kept his voice calm. She hasn't done anything wrong. The guard's eyes narrowed. She has used forbidden signs. She has drawn ancient runes. She has been witnessed performing gestures tied to lost royal rituals. She is royal. Marcus replied. The second guard stepped forward. She was removed from the royal line. She has no right to speak. She was born with a curse. The king himself declared it. The girl stood behind Marcus now, silent, but straight. Strong. Still. Her hands trembled behind her back. She remembered this. These uniforms. These voices. They were the ones who dragged her away as a child. We are taking her now, the guard said. Marcus stepped forward. No. Silence. A beat of tension. The guards placed their hands on their weapons. She's not your property, Marcus said. She's a person. The girl reached out slowly and touched Marcus's hand. Then, for the first time, she spoke a single word. Her voice was soft, dusty, like it hadn't been used in years, but it was clear. No. The guards froze. Her voice echoed through the room. Like thunder, the fire cracked behind her. The word wasn't loud, but it shook the walls. The lead guard clenched his fists. So, she speaks again. That confirms it. She must be silenced. The girl took a step forward. No, she said again, this time louder, and then she drew a rune in the air. Not on paper. Not on dirt. But with her glowing finger, a shape of protection, a royal defense symbol. A blue ring of light circled around her and Marcus. The guards backed away. She remembers the royal blood magic. One whispered. She's awakened, said. Another. Marcus stood beside her, eyes blazing. She was never broken, he said. You broke her. Word spread quickly through the palace. The silent girl speaks. She used ancient magic. She stood against the Inquisitors. And something strange began to happen. Servants came to visit. Quietly, at night. One old woman brought a faded cloth. She gave this to me when she was 5, she whispered. Before they took her away. A young stable boy said, she healed my pet bird. Just by holding it. One by one. The forgotten people of the kingdom remembered her. She wasn't a curse. She was a gift the court had tried to erase, but the king saw it differently. He ordered her arrested again. He shouted in rage, she will destroy everything we built. That girl is the end of my legacy. He didn't say daughter, he said that girl. Marcus heard the order. Through a palace informant. They're going to storm this house at dawn, the man whispered. They'll take her alive. Or not at all. Marcus looked at her. He didn't ask if she was afraid. He knew she was, but more than that, she was ready. She took his hand. Together. They ran. Not to hide, but toward the truth. They entered the old royal library, buried deep under the palace. Forgotten. Locked for decades. She opened it with a single rune drawn in the air. It recognized her blood. Inside, ancient scrolls glowed with blue light, paintings of her family before. The king rewrote history hung on cracked stone walls. She wasn't the first of her kind. She was the last. And now, she was reclaiming what was stolen. Footsteps echoed behind. Them. Guards had followed. The girl didn't hide. She turned to face them, drew one last rune in the air. Not of war. Not of fear, but of truth, and her voice still soft, but growing stronger, spoke a sentence that shook the chamber. I was punished for being different. Now I will rise because of it. The old library was alive. Dust floated like glowing fireflies. Scrolls whispered without voices. Blue symbols drifted across the walls. Pulsing as if they recognized her breath, the girl stood in the center of the ancient room, her hands glowing with soft royal light. Marcus stood beside her, silent, steady, and watching something impossible unfold. This place was sealed before she was born, Marcus whispered, but it knew her. The doors had opened to her touch. The light followed her steps. It was as if the entire chamber had been waiting for her return. The girl looked around the vast space. She didn't speak much not yet, but she didn't need to. Her eyes told a story older than the kingdom above. She walked past a broken statue. The face had been erased, deliberately, but when she reached out and touched the stone, the carving repaired itself. The erased face returned. It was a woman, with the same silver hair, the same eyes, her mother, a queen whose memory had been destroyed by the king. She wasn't broken, Marcus whispered. The girl looked at him. He understood. The power they feared was never her silence. It was her memory. Her bloodline, her connection to a truth. Buried deep, she placed her hands on an old pedestal at the center of the room. The stone glowed. Images appeared in the air, floating like smoke. A council room. Guards arguing. The king younger shouting, "She carries the old blood. That power will end us." And then a baby crying. The memory faded. Marcus clenched his fists. She was locked away. From birth. Because of her power. Because she carried something the new king didn't control. Suddenly, the runes around the chamber shifted, warning symbols. Intruders. Marcus drew his weapon. "They're coming," he said. The girl turned. Her eyes had changed. No longer soft. Now focused. Strong. Royal guards stormed the library's lower stairs. "Step away from the relics," one shouted, but as they entered, the glowing walls responded. Not with fear. With defense. The air rippled. A pulse of blue light burst outward from the girl, knocking the first row of guards to the floor. They weren't injured, but frozen, trapped. Inside protective light, Marcus stared. "You didn't hurt them," he said. She shook her head. She didn't want to destroy. She wanted to awaken. More soldiers came, this time with anti-magic weapons. The girl raised her hand, but not to attack. She whispered a word Marcus didn't understand, and the floor beneath them changed. Vines of light grew from the stone itself and wrapped around the soldiers' feet. Their weapons fell. She wasn't fighting like the king's army. She was using royal blood magic, the kind built to protect, not kill. The guards hesitated. Some stepped back. One even dropped to a knee and whispered, "She's not a curse. She's the true heir." The truth was breaking through. Even the weapons of fear couldn't stop it. After the guards left, defeated not by violence but by truth, Marcus and the girl stood alone in the heart of the library. She sat on the old queen's throne. Her fingers traced the armrest where hidden symbols glowed to life. Marcus knelt beside her, not out of duty, but respect. "You were never broken," he said. "You were just more powerful than they could allow." She finally spoke again, soft, but stronger than ever before. "They feared what I could become," Marcus smiled. "Then let's give them something real to fear." She looked at him, a slow nod, and behind her, the ancient bloodline symbols lit up one by one. A throne was waking. Outside, the palace felt it. The wind shifted. The stars pulsed. The nobles looked up from their dinner tables with uneasy hearts. The king felt it too. Far away, on his private balcony, he dropped his wine and clenched the rail. No, no. She wasn't supposed to awaken. His voice trembled. He finally understood. He hadn't given away something broken. He had given away the one thing that could destroy him, and now she was ready. The sky above the wastes turned a deep red. Smoke rose from burning towers, and screams echoed in the distance. Cade stood at the edge of the battlefield, breathing slowly. His armor was cracked. Blood dripped down his cheek. But his eyes, sharp and calm, watched the horror ahead. Behind him stood Riala, the so-called broken daughter of the alien king. She was no longer the quiet, trembling girl who once flinched at every sound. Her hands were steady now, her back straight, but her body still trembled, not from fear, but from the fire building inside her. She looked at Cade. "I'm ready." Cade turned to her. "You'll only get one chance. Use what you've learned. Use who you are." Far ahead, General Katan of the Zarn Empire, the same brute who had called her a defect on the day she was born, marched toward them with a small army. His spiked mech suit crushed stone with every step, and his voice, booming through speakers, mocked her even. "Now, you dare show your failure here?" Katan laughed. "She couldn't even speak as a child. And now she stands in my way?" Cade's hand gripped Riala's shoulder. "He's wrong. Let's prove it." As the Zarn warriors surged forward, Cade stepped into battle like a shadow, moving between blasts and blades, disabling foes with quick, brutal strikes. But the enemy was too many. He wouldn't last long alone. Riala closed her eyes. She remembered Cade's training. Not just how to fight, but how to feel. How to listen. How to stop hiding her flaws and make them her power. Her body, born fragile, had developed rare senses too sharp, too delicate for combat. But now they told her everything. The direction of wind, the breath of every enemy, the sound of blood rushing through a soldier's heart. She exhaled and moved. Riala danced through the battlefield not with force but with grace. Every motion was timed perfectly. She slipped between blasts. Her light blade hummed in her hand, slicing where no one saw it coming. Caden's soldiers began to fall back, confused. Who was this alien girl who moved like a spirit? But Caden growled, furious. Enough. He raised his arm and fired a massive plasma cannon directly at Cade. Riala screamed something Cade had never heard from her before. A sound full of rage, love, and raw instinct. She leapt. The blast struck her instead. Silence followed. Smoke filled the air. Cade rushed to her, heart pounding. Her small body lay still, armor melted, her breathing shallow. No, 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 he whispered, lifting her in his arms. Riala, stay with me. Her eyes fluttered open. I heard his heart, she whispered. I knew when he'd shoot. But I had to save you. You weren't supposed to protect me, he choked. That wasn't the plan. She smiled. Weakly, plans change when hearts change. Her fingers touched his cheek. Did I pass your test? He held her tighter. You passed something much greater. The soldiers, shocked by what they had seen, stopped fighting. Even Caden hesitated. From the distance, royal drones floated in. The alien king himself had been watching from orbit. And now his voice echoed through a projection. My daughter was once called broken. He paused, emotion in his voice for the first time. But she gave her life to save a human. She faced a warlord with nothing but spirit. And now I see she was never broken, only unshaped. He looked at Cade. And you, human, shaped her with something I never gave her. Patience, time, and love. Riala stirred again. She wasn't gone. Not yet. Cade felt her pulse weak but present. He turned to the nearest Zarn warrior and shouted, Get me a healer! Now, Caden stepped forward, fists shaking. She's still alive? That freak? No, I'll end it myself. But he didn't get the chance. Riala's eyes opened fully, now burning gold, and her voice, strong and steady, rang across the battlefield. You were never worthy of fear, Caden. She stood, the air around her shimmered. A new strength awakened, not Cade's, not her father's, but hers, and for the first time, the so-called broken daughter walked toward her enemy with fire in her steps and the storm behind her. The grand chamber of the United Galactic Assembly was filled with silence. Billions watched from across the stars as the final vote was about to be cast. In the center stood Lori, the same girl once laughed at, once discarded like broken glass. But now, her presence shook empires. A few years ago, she couldn't even speak without stammering. Her hands trembled. Her mind was full of fear. She was called useless, a wasted royal, a shameful daughter of the proud Varnic Empire. But that was before she met the human commander Elias Ward. Now, Larry wore armor forged with human steel and Varnic silver. Her hair flowed like fire behind her. Her eyes didn't tremble anymore. They blazed with purpose. And beside her, not behind, stood Elias, silent, respectful, proud. The room held leaders of hundreds of alien races. They all knew the story now. The broken princes had done the impossible. She had united 3 warring star systems, not with fear, not with power, but with wisdom, patience, and heart. One of the elders leaned forward. He was from a species that lived 800 years and rarely spoke unless it mattered. This human, the elder said, pointing at Elias, taught her to see strength not in perfection, but in scars. There were murmurs across the chamber. Some nodded, others looked ashamed. The Varnic king, sitting in the high seat, looked away. His face was pale. He never believed his daughter would return, let alone rise higher than any child he had ever favored. Liari turned and looked straight at him. "Father," she said, her voice calm yet full of weight. "You once said I was born broken, but I was only unshaped, like a sword still in the forge." The king did not reply. She looked around. "There are others like me in every race cast aside for being different, for being slow or sensitive or unsure, but I say this to them, you are not broken. You are unfinished. You are becoming." Silence, then clapping. First a human delegate, then a Varnek rebel leader. Then the entire chamber stood and clapped, many with tears. Elias didn't move. He just smiled. She had done this on her own terms. Later, as the ceremony ended and they stood on the balcony overlooking a galaxy in awe, Liari finally whispered, "I'm scared." Elias looked at her gently. "That's okay. You were always brave, even when scared." She leaned against him. "You gave me strength." "No," he said softly, brushing a strand of her hair back. "You found your own. I just held the mirror." The stars above shimmered. Ships from all systems blinked their lights in salute. And somewhere deep inside, Liari no longer felt like a mistake. She was no longer the shameful gift of a cruel king. She was a leader, a symbol, a queen of hope. And the galaxy would never forget the human who dared to see treasure in the trash. Or the girl who proved him right.